Tony D and Little Joan, and this is a Hollywoke hot take of a different sort. I try to focus on particular articles rather than a whole bunch of them. So, the latest controversy seems to be, at least for Fandom Pulse, Peacemaker Season 2 opens up with full frontal orgy as James Gunn's DC hits new degenerate low. And again, I'm not a religious guy. I don't throw around a word like degenerate as easily as some people on the Fandom Pulse might, but I have to agree with this. Like, there's no need for this. There's no need, except to get people to watch, which is a weird thing to do considering this is supposed to tie into DC's Superman, which was meant to be sort of a reset of the DC brand. So you're not really doing anybody's favors by slipping this in. Now, I'll read some of the article here. James Gunn's vision for DC has reached a new degenerate low. See, they use the word degenerate like 19 times. They did 2 articles on this, by the way. With Peacemaker Season 2 opening with full frontal bisexual orgy that would make HBO Max blush. Despite claims that woke is dead in 2025, Gunn appears determined to push a perverted agenda harder than ever, using beloved comic book characters as vehicles for his sexual obsessions. I don't know about that last part, but doing this stuff is, in my view, just shock value to get people to watch. And I would also argue that it's shock value to get the audience that it's aimed at to watch, some of which are kids. This would be older kids. Older kids would think this is cool. Like older teenagers, right? Because they'd be like, oh, I got to watch Peacemaker. I hear there's some full frontal in that. Why he would make a character bisexual and think that's cool? Well, see, that's the new demo, the LGBTQIA plus demo of young teens, exploring their sexuality or whatever. It is degenerate to sort of appeal to that, because narratively speaking, I don't think there's really any place for this in the mix. They did stuff like this back in the 80s, but they never showed anything. You might see a guy come out of a room half dressed, but he'd be dressed enough that you could show it on TV, and there'd be some girl in her underwear also getting dressed, or she'd be under covers or whatever, and say, oh, Dirk, come back to bed. And that would be about as racy as it got, and you could still telegraph what was going on. And so this is a bit much. Considering that part of the complaint of superheroes has been for a long time that they're not superheroes anymore, right? Whether they're woke or whatever this is. I mean, they're calling it woke. Somewhat, I would say. Not as woke as like the woke stuff, the gender identity and the message seems to be at the center of it. This just seems to be sexual for the sake of shock value, let's say. Especially since, they announced, the continuation is Peacemaker. After you watch Superman, watch this. Because that would get kids on board to watch it. They'd be the only people probably who would be like, oh yeah, I got to watch Peacemaker now that I watch Superman, according to James Gunn. So not a good thing to do. You could easily do this story without showing full frontal nudity. I don't really care about the bisexual part. Again, I think that's just like adding it in the mix. But you could have done this without actually showing it. You could have implied it, right? No actual nudity. So is this superhero stuff? Like, Peacemaker is kind of barely a superhero. He's kind of a loser, in my view, the character. And I don't say that just because I don't like John Cena, but because the way the character was portrayed. You know, and the idea that, oh, well, he didn't get into the highfalutin superhero team, so now he's gone back to drugs and alcohol and sex. Like, that doesn't really scan, right? Because superheroes aren't really a thing. Hate to remind everybody in Hollywood, they're not really a thing. This is a problem in superhero comics too, or had been. Now they have bigger problems because they're all insufferably woke. But the problem in comics was initially the superheroes were supposed to be kind of underground, right? Even Superman. Like, he was there, but nobody quite knew his deal, and they would hear about him. It'd be almost like an urban legend fighting crime. Now they kind of have this idea of superheroes as celebrities. I mean, the boys took that to its zenith. So doing this in the DC universe, you know, especially to a character who apparently was never like that. I mean, Peacemaker was just another IP they dug up, so John Cena, I guess, would have something to do. The guy's got muscles. There could have been a lot of different characters he could have done. But Peacemaker, yeah, I'm not really digging this. Doesn't seem to go with his deal. Especially since, you know, he was supposed to be a literal peacemaker. Instead, he kind of like shoots people a lot. And they also threw in Vigilante, who was another guy who was actually kind of a serious character when he came out, and then, you know, was sort of hot for a little while. And then DC, I guess that was in DC initially, and then they kind of gobbled him up and threw him into the DC universe. What happens is, in the world of comics, when you have superheroes and they get gobbled up by the superhero universe, they become just another player on the stage, right? So I think in the case of Vigilante, and correct me if I'm wrong, comic book historians, initially the Vigilante was kind of separate and kind of unknown, or at least like the way he rolled out, and he got popular. And I don't know if he was ever integrated in the comics into the DC universe. I guess he was, or he was so unimportant that nobody paid attention to him. But now, when you take a character like Vigilante and integrate him into the DC universe, like you're integrating Peacemaker after all these years, he can't be like Superman. He can't be like Batman. He has to kind of be his own thing. And then, on top of that, they're reinventing these characters for the modern age. And I don't mean that for, you know, woke reasons necessarily. Sometimes some of these characters are literally from the 40s, and their whole character was like, haha, I'm a good person, let's be good together. And that's just not going to play in 2025. So, but this, what kind of superhero is this guy? Right? Like, part of the thing with superheroes, as the guy at the Fourth Age would do in his videos, is they have to be virtuous. You're not a virtuous person if you're knee deep in drugs, alcohol, and sex, right? I mean, if anything, it should have been him trying to resist that. And I guess he's trying to, and then, you know, but like, to actually show this in a show that probably would be viewed by younger viewers, or at least entice younger viewers, is a dumb idea. The DC universe for superheroes, especially Batman, used to be PG at best. Like, that was as hard as it would go. Maybe you'd say PG-13 in some of the later comics. I knew one of the editors at DC, he actually suggested an R-rated Batman comic, and they, at the time, blew their top. And at the time when he told the story, I thought, oh, it's kind of a good idea, it'd be different. Now I look back on it and say, yeah, it's probably not good for the IP in the long run. And what are you going to do with this IP, right? Like, what are you going to do with it? Like, if John Cena leaves and they have to recast it, or he dies or something. You're going to bring back, oh, let's bring back Peacemaker. Oh, you know, that guy who shot people and, you know, wasn't a very good superhero. I don't think it makes it very memorable either. You know, everybody over at the Fandom Pulse seems hyper-focused on the woke part, but I would just say it's dumb. Here's Nerdrotic. Gather around, kids. James Gunn made a Superman available for digital rentals so you can watch it before Peacemaker. See all your favorite DC characters like Green Lantern, Hawkgirl, and Max Lord, along with Peacemaker, who participates in a cocaine-fueled frontal bisexual orgy. yeah, even if he hadn't shown it, he'd be able to make this joke, right? And it degenerates the character more than anything else. So why am I following a superhero that does this? Now there's another article following up with James Gunn trying to justify it, and basically he said, I think people have come to expect Peacemaker's extreme. I mean, I'm trying to really be careful to warn everyone that it's a continuation of Superman, but it's also for adults. I think that's important. We have to have it before the show. I talk about it all the time. Yeah, that kind of doesn't matter. It kind of doesn't matter because, if I was 12 and I saw Superman and loved it, and you told me Peacemaker was the next step in that, I'd want to see it. And you made it for adults. Now, you can warn me, but I don't care about that warning. My parents might, if they know about it, if they follow this stuff, which they won't. Now, comics, in one sense, has always been subversive, in that it did stories that you couldn't see in other media. However, the idea behind that was to do stories that other media wouldn't really tackle, right? So when you had, say, Green Lantern and Green Arrow dealing with a Speedy's heroin addiction, it was kind of like opening up the door to a different kind of storytelling in the 70s. It was kind of like they were doing in American cinema. It was the first time they got down into the nitty gritty and said, oh, here's a real life problem. How would these heroes deal with it? And to do that once or twice is different and unusual and weird. And yeah, but now that's been done. And in the Neil Adams was also dealing with the consequences of that. I don't really think Peacemaker, because it's a goofy character and, he's the main character in the show, they're not really going to deal with the consequences of a cocaine-fueled orgy. They're just going to kind of move past it, I'm guessing. They also quote Pope Paul VI in this. I'm not sure why. I get it. The guys on Fandom Pulse, this is John F. Trent, are kind of religious. I don't really think the Catholic Church, in an article just at random about comics, you're putting that up as a moral arbiter. Like, the Catholic Church has had some issues with that. Not necessarily cocaine-fueled orgies, but more like other things. So I'm not sure you want to even put that in. Maybe you go back to, like, I don't know, Thomas Aquinas or someone. Pope Paul VI, isn't he relatively recent? Is that the current pope? I don't know. Even if it's not, like, I'm not sure the Catholic Church is where you want to go on this. I think it's just as simple. What is James Gunn doing? Does this make the show better? Does this make the character better? I don't think it really does. Peacemaker, from what I've seen of it, is really a show. It's a goofy superhero show. And yeah, you can still do that. Like he falls off the wagon, starts drinking, doing drugs, having sex again. But why show it? Like, you didn't need to show it. If you show it, then you've turned it into a different kind of entertainment. And you've opened the door for these kids to follow it over. It's not necessary. You're just creating problems for yourself. Like, you could have told that same story, not shown it, and then you can market this all day long to the Superman fans. Who cares? Now, some parents might still object to it, even though it's only implied and you don't actually see it. Like, oh, I don't know about this cocaine-fueled orgies that he mentioned. Oh, you don't see it. Well, I mean, they'd still be a little iffy on it, but at least the kid wouldn't have seen anything, right? And maybe you can deal with the consequences of that more so than showing it, And not for nothing, we just got out of an era where everybody's being Me Too'd left and right. Why did you even chance it at this point? This is, to me, this is the wrong project for this kind of stuff. Like, it'd be different if you were doing some, I don't know, sexy James Bond thing. Like, if you have a topless girl in James Bond, yeah, that's what James Bond is for. I want to see a topless girl in James Bond. I want to see a topless girl in James Bond. I want to see them in horror movies again. R-rated movies, in other words. Ones that are designed for older audiences. I don't necessarily need to see topless girls in Peacemaker. You know, at least in this context. Like, maybe one could argue, like, you know, if you were doing the famous She-Hulk issue where she's sunbathing on top of a building and a guy in a helicopter comes by and everything blows off, including her bikini top, and she has to chase him holding her boobs, like, that would be very funny. It'd also be sexy, and it would also be something from the comic. And you'd kind of be skirting the line, but you wouldn't be crossing over. This kind of crosses over into something else. It's not in the comics, so what are you adding here? You know? And James Gunn is perfectly capable of adding character development. He has done it before. I think the problem with a character like Peacemaker, he's just not a very strong character. Why are they harping on this character? Well, it's because it's being played by John Cena, and they're trying. It's not so much the character; they're trying to push John Cena. Is my take on it. This is typical in Hollywood. You develop something for a particular actor, and then you push it. So, like, to me, like, if I was just running the DCU, I wouldn't even give Peacemaker a show. Like, why? He's not an important character in the DC universe. There are plenty of other guys you could have picked that would have been, in my view, more interesting. But just because John Cena just happened to play him in the Suicide Squad, where he was kind of a throwaway character who died but then didn't die, you know, now he's back and famous enough that they're like, oh yeah, let's develop a show with that John Cena character. You're not following the creative sort of organic path, in my view. You're following, let's promote John Cena because people will watch it because it's John Cena. I think they should have just given him a different character. Which character? I don't know. It's, you know, it's not a deep bench in the DC universe, but yeah, I just, quite frankly, you know, like, there's a character called Hitman. Really wouldn't have worked for John Cena because I think he's Scottish or English. But that, to me, was a stronger character. You've got Martian Manhunter. I don't think they've done him yet. He would have been interesting. Could Cena have played him? I don't know. It's probably a good idea to give Cena a throwaway character that's comedic. But, you know, once you get into season 2 of a character, you got to start developing him a little more, even if he's sort of comedic. But I'm not sure this guy is even worth doing. He was kind of a bad guy in the Suicide Squad. Now you've kind of made him a good guy, and then you open up season 2 where he's depressed because he didn't get into a superhero team, and now he's doing this. So, yeah, I mean, I basically agree with the spirit of these articles. I don't know what James Gunn's doing. I think this is a dumb move. It might turn people off from the DCU. You could have parents who just aren't clued in, letting their kids watch it on Max and then finding out later, because kids are bad at keeping secrets, that, oh my God, you watch this? Yeah, and they're not going to be too happy. And when they see that, the next time something comes out from DC, they're going to be like, no, you can't watch it. Or, you know, they're just going to say to they're going to make sure they don't have HBO Max, which is even worse for the people in Warner Brothers, right? So imagine you got HBO Max, you got it for yourself and maybe the family, and then your kid watched this R-rated show and he's too young for it, let's say he's like, I don't know, 12. It's a little young to be watching this kind of stuff. And now you're like, oh man, I can't let him watch this stuff. So then you pull the plug on Max, or change the code at least so your kid can't watch it. And now, you have to worry about that. It's just not worth it. Parents have other things to do. And, the idea that, okay, the DC Universe, see, here's the Superman movie. It's perfectly fine for kids. Oh, but here's Peacemaker. The next step. This is R-rated. Like, that doesn't make any sense. If it's the next step and Superman-related stuff is in it, probably should be the same audience. You shouldn't be shifting audience. What's the purpose? Is there a bunch of people who said, oh, I don't want to watch the Superman movie. It's not R-rated. Oh, I'll watch Peacemaker. That's got some full frontal nudity in it. Can't get that anywhere else on the internet or on streaming. Yeah, and that's another thing, too. Adding nudity has been not a big deal in movies. You have to understand, back in the 80s, when nudity was almost 100% guaranteed in a movie that, like, didn't really need it. Like, these slasher movies didn't really need nudity, but they put it in there. Why? Because we didn't have the internet. So half the reason to go to these stupid schlock horror movies was to go, see some naked girls at least. Those days are past, right? The story has to be better, because I can see boobs anywhere on the internet, right? You can see boobs all day on the internet. So making that an appeal and trying to compete with the internet is almost pointless. It's really pointless. You can see so much on the internet. There's no point in competing in that realm. It's everywhere. It's literally everywhere. You can see boobs. You can see all kinds of crazy stuff, right? So don't put that in this show. Put something in the show you can't see anywhere else. One of the things I can't see anywhere else is the DC characters. So there's still hundreds of characters in the DC universe they haven't put in yet. So putting them in, even if they're corny characters, even if they die in one episode, or even if they're not particularly good, at least it's different. Someone somewhere wants to see these characters. Maybe someone somewhere, like Gunn, he put a cool spin on Polka Dot Man, a really stupid superhero character for the Suicide Squad movie. You can put those kinds of spins on other characters too. There's literally hundreds of them from the 30s and 40s when they were just cranking these characters out. And not for nothing, James Gunn can make his own characters. He's perfectly capable of doing that. So instead of like dragging out a character from the 40s, 30s, 40s, and 50s that no one's ever really heard of, and then you revamp them like you did with Peacemaker, why not just come up with a new guy? Like a guy who would have been created in this modern age, a superhero that would make sense in the modern age. Like if you had, I'm not saying this is a good idea, I'm just off the top of my head, like if you had a guy called the Hacker, right? The Hacker could only be created in the modern age of computers, right? So you create a character like that for, Peacemaker to interact with for whatever reason, good or bad. They actually had a character in Marvel, and his deal was he had a cordless phone, and I think his name was Danny. He looked like Billy Joel, and the idea was Danny could. I think it was Danny. He could arrange things via the phone, and he was really good at that. And that's what made him sort of dangerous. And at one point, he throws his phone at a guy to like knock him out or whatever. So you could do a similar thing with a hacker or a cell phone guy. You could do, something that's new. That would be a problem or an ally for Peacemaker that would appeal to today's audiences instead of this, which I would argue it doesn't really appeal to audiences. But, this was probably shot, I'm going to say like a year ago. So at least. So you got to remember that everything you see on TV and movies probably was shot at least a year ago, probably maybe two, and probably written closer to 3 years ago. So we're in 2025. This was probably still written during the woke era, and that's why it kind of got approved. Maybe initially Gunn wrote the scene, and they said, I don't know about this orgy scene. And then he was like, well, what if we made him bisexual? And they probably went, oh, the LGBTQ crowd? Oh, yeah, we want, this would have been 2022, 2023. They were like, yeah, we're still looking for that crowd. Good idea. So, they are malleable in some respects. But this, again, the easiest thing to do is not watch this. If you want them to stop making essentially bad TV or bad movies, just don't watch it. Too many people, and this happened in comics too, which is kind of funny. Too many people, they get caught in the momentum of watching something, and they just watch it. I watched the entire run of Voyager. I thought it was a terrible show. We kind of watched it to make fun of it, but still, I watched the entire run of that show. And then when the Enterprise came on, I watched the first episode, and I went, I'm out. So, yeah. I think this is a dumb move on James Gunn's part. I do think it's a little bit degenerate to add this kind of stuff when it seems so unnecessary, even from a creative standpoint. But anyhow, that's my opinion. And that's it for me, Tony D and Little Joan. Check us out on the green site, the orange site, and the black site for our other video. I didn't do a Hollywoke hot take today. This was it. Tomorrow, I'm at the New Jersey Folk Festival from 10 to 4. Get there early. I'll be on stage at 10 for my, I think I'm doing like a half-hour talk, like a half hour to 40 minutes on the Jersey Devil. So it won't be the whole thing, but it'll be the origin of the Jersey Devil. And hopefully I won't get yanked off stage before I'm finished. I usually time it perfectly, but it's going to be an early day. But I'll be there 10 to 4 in the Artisan area somewhere. And it's going to be a good day. I mean, this is the 50th annual Folk Festival, so come on out. Hope to see you in New Brunswick. We'll see you tomorrow.